Hello and welcome. All right, good evening. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. We are back tonight with a great program for you. I'll start with introductions. I am Connie McCarley, Assistant Superintendent of Educational Support Services with the Walnut Creek School District, and I am thrilled to bring you tonight a topic of much importance and value to many people, a topic on executive functioning. And our presenters tonight, being brought to you from Walnut Creek School District, are our very own school counselors. We have Dana Wagner, we have Stephanie Argenbright, and we have Julia Green. And they have a great program ready for you tonight. I will let you know ahead of time, this webinar is being recorded and it will be posted on our district website. So you can always go back and listen to it again or share it with a friend. And we're also going to post the slide deck on the website, so you'll be able to access the plethora of resources the team has put together for you and all of the information that they will share with you tonight. So again, thank you for joining us. I am going to pass it now over to our presenters.
Thank you. I'm going to let Stephanie go ahead and introduce herself to start with while I get the share screen ready.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Argenbright, and I am a school counselor at Walnut Creek Intermediate. If your student attends that school and their last name is between letters A and L, they are on my caseload.
And I am Julia Green. I am the other school counselor at Walnut Creek Intermediate. So if your student's last name starts with an M through a Z, then I am your student's school counselor. And Miss Wagner is muted.
There we go. But I know that mute would come at some point. Hi, I'm Dana Wagner. I am the school counselor at Tice Creek School, and I have been in the district for over 20 years now, about 12 of those in counseling. So I'm looking forward to this evening and what we have to present for you. The one thing we do have for you tonight is a little survey to start our night. And so if you have a scratch piece of paper handy, a paper, we'll give you kind of a minute to get that. You don't need it, but we are going to do a little survey. So if you want to kind of track your own answers, you can. We really want you to start thinking about executive functioning and kind of what executive functioning is in your personal life. And so as we talk through the night, we're going to go through different skills. But just for a moment, we want you to take a look at these three boxes, and there's actually one more slide that has some other pieces on it. And just take a moment and rank yourself in these areas and think about it in a way of, I never do this, maybe a 0. Some of the time, so 1. Most of the time is a 2, and a 3 is an always. And so as we're honing in tonight on executive functioning for our students and our children, we also want to be thinking about our own executive functioning. So just take a minute and go ahead and look at these three boxes. We will kind of wait patiently for you to kind of read these through. We won't spend too much time on them, but just to give you a chance to hone in on what we're talking about tonight. And as you go through, these don't need to be perfect answers. You can see some of them cross over, but just to really start focusing your thoughts on where we're going to be tonight. These are tasks that we ask of people every day, and we all have strengths and areas of growth. And so these are just ways to start thinking about your own. You'll see in about one more minute, I'm going to start actually putting up areas of executive functioning and the skills we'll be talking about tonight, and where these kind of survey questions fit into our executive functioning skills. So take about one more minute on this slide. So as you can see, the first box starts looking at our planning and organizational executive functioning skills, which we'll be talking about tonight. These are these tasks to be able to prioritize and to organize not just your space and your environment, but also your ideas and plans and work execution. Our middle box here is for attention. We are going to ask you to pay some attention tonight. We have a lot of information that we will be covering tonight. And so having a sustained attention for those times is a skill that we need to get through situations just like this one. And then our third one on this page is time management, which I hope that a lot of you are here for. As middle school counselors, we hear a lot about time management, but working and also in the pre-K 5, I also see that this is a great skill that we can start developing in our younger students as well. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide. And it has 3 more boxes for you to take a peek at. Same things apply. Again, this doesn't need to be hugely thought over extensive, just kind of your own thoughts and feelings about your executive functioning skills. So go ahead and take a look at these 3 boxes and see where you kind of fit in. Take about 1 more minute. And remember, we have these on the slides. They're available for you. So it's something you can always go back and look at. These are great to do as a family. You can also come back to do this together when these are posted up on our website tomorrow. And just like last time, I'll start revealing each of these skills. A focus of our district this year has been the SEL component of our daily learning and our curriculum and putting it into our school day. Self-regulation is a piece of this, and it's really where executive functioning and these SEL skills all come together. So we'll be talking about that this evening. We'll also be talking about being flexible. And what does that mean? Flexibility is actually, cognitive flexibility is actually an executive functioning skill. So we'll be talking about that tonight and see how those complement each other into our SEL program as well. And then our final skill that we'll be talking about this evening is perseverance. Also very much a skill that crosses many areas of our executive functioning and that SEL component. So with that, we're going to move on and start our actual presentation. So tonight we'll be talking about the areas of planning and organization, time management, attention, flexibility, self-regulation, and perseverance. But really what we want you to be thinking about tonight, and this is an important piece of executive functioning because a lot of people think you either have it or you don't. And that isn't true. Executive functioning are specific skills that can be developed and practiced. And so I think we really want you to think that this is an area that everyone can grow in. It's not just a set skill that either exists or doesn't exist. And as a matter of fact, it's really important that we develop and practice these skills with our children because that is how they gain that competence in these areas. And so tonight we'll really be focusing on how this is going to be, what these skills are, why they're important, and how you can help. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julia, and she's going to start with our first few skills.
All right, hi everybody. So the first 3 skills kind of go, well, all of them really overlap a lot, but particularly these 3, which are planning, organization, and time management. So our first skill is planning, which is creating a strategy for attaining a goal. So looking at, you have to figure out what you need, create the goal based on that, and then determine what steps you're going to take to complete that task. So Dina, this kind of goes over, we're going to go over these pretty quickly just since we don't have a lot of time, and then you can look through the whole list when we get when we post it on the website tomorrow. But things like, again, setting the goals and figuring out the steps to make them, in terms of schoolwork and your own work at home, or chores at home, figuring out what time of day that students or yourself are most productive, and making plans to do things during those time frames, like when you plan a nap for like the younger kids, things like that. And then, breaking things down into smaller parts, planning out when you're going to do which pieces of which assignments, what days are better to do laundry versus cleaning your bedroom, things like that. So, Dana. So planning is important. It makes sure that steps aren't missed, that you're not missing anything to create a bigger picture of your finishing your homework or cleaning your room. You say, we're planning to clean this corner today, that corner tomorrow, that corner the next day. And it provides you a strategy for getting to your goals. So it makes it feel a little less daunting from going to, I'm going to get an A in all my classes, to I'm going to do this, this, and this to get to that point. Dana. So planning skills, setting SMART goals is kind of a really good way to figure out, like, once you've determined what you need to do, setting a SMART goal is what we use a lot in education. It's also used in business world. You might have heard it before, but it means that it's a specific goal. So instead of saying, I want to do better in school, you say, I want to get an A or B in all my classes, or I want to make sure that I read to my kid 5 nights a week, or things like that. Making sure it's measurable. So again, a number thing, you get an A, you read a certain number of times. You can, for the mile, you walk a mile in a certain amount of time. Make sure that it's achievable. So you're not going to go from, for the middle schoolers, from D's in all your classes to straight A's. That's probably not, it is possible, but it's like, start with more realistic goals of, hey, we're going to get you up to a C or even a B. And then we can start looking at getting that next tier of goal up to an A. Making sure that it's relevant, because otherwise your student in particular may not want to follow through if the goal doesn't seem relevant to them, doesn't really sit with them. And then setting a timeline on it so that you're not saying, yeah, I'll get an A eventually, or I'll clean my room eventually. Instead, we're saying, you're going to clean your room by Sunday night, or you're going to, do your homework by 8:30 tonight, or things. Some other ways to do it that are not specific to school, but just practicing planning things out in general, is like having them help practice, plan out when things are happening in their week, or what days you're going to make what meals. And then within that, like, what ingredients do you need to go to the grocery store? So it helps them learn, like, kind of those thinking the steps ahead before you hit that ultimate goal of making your meal. Dina. The next step is organization, which is how to develop and maintain a system that keeps everything neat and orderly. So this is things like, again, homework, tracking assignments and papers, keeping a clean room is part of being orderly, things like that. So, it increases productivity because it helps you develop patterns, which help people, like, as they get in patterns, they can start to do things faster. It also makes sure for homework pieces, or even at home, like, that assignments aren't getting lost, or that they're not losing their clothes because they've got one sock under the bed and one sock under the dresser and everything's everywhere. So having that organization helps keep things in place. It's less stressful, and the routines help it go faster. Yeah. So it kind of looks like for middle schoolers, again, some of this is more middle school oriented, but for middle schoolers, like things like tracking, using a planner. WCI uses planners. I know the other schools don't, but using a planner or some sort of scheduling thing to keep track of assignments that are due. You can also use that for like tasks, like chores or any other thing, but just some sort of planner or checklist to keep track of things. Using a binder or folder, and then just keeping everything like neat and orderly. So you don't have paper strewn everywhere on your desk at school, or you don't have clothes all over your room, or things like that. Um, so again, things like for school, supporting your student would be things like making sure for middle schoolers that they have a binder or folder to put their work in. Folders are also helpful, like, when they're bringing home their artwork, whether that's in middle school or in elementary. So, and then making sure they know how to organize things like their binders and folders for work. Homework on one side, handouts on the other, or all homework goes in one folder and then the other, all the handouts are in another, or things like that. And you can do regular check-ins with your student. And then once we want to try and get them to start being more independent, but starting out doing check-ins with them on that, check-ins with them on what the homeworks are. And then again, having them use graphic organizers or planners to kind of keep track of things. Dana. So here's some examples. These are awesome, of some like visual scheduling things. You use these for at home too, obviously. So like there's I'm pointing, you can't see me pointing, but there's the like chore task schedule. Yes, over there. Thank you, Dana. You're wonderful. With the visuals of what the different tasks are that your student needs to do in the morning, afternoon, and night. And that you can do for like at home. You could do it for school tasks, anything like that. A whiteboard checklist. I use that all the time. Whiteboards are amazing. You can erase them and then you do the next week's thing. But that helps them keep track of, like, you can write down this assignment, this assignment, this assignment, and then check it off as they do it. So they get that sense of satisfaction when they've done their homework assignment, or they've cleaned up their room, or they've done the dishes, or they made dinner or something like that. And then also just the time-based one where it actually has the time as well. So using these kind of visual examples and things for them to keep track is really helpful, especially for younger people, but obviously as adults, I find it super helpful. I know a lot of other adults that find it super helpful to have some form of visual written way of keeping track of things. So continuing that, using those chore charts at home is a great way. Making sure that your child has a place for things to go when they come home, or when they're at home every time, so they know where things go, so they can practice putting things in their place. So, when you come home, do you put your keys in a bowl right by the door, or in your dresser drawer, wherever you put it? Where do your kids put their shoes? Do they just leave them everywhere? Do they not? Again, no judgment here. It's all over the place for so many different people, but just something for kids to try and figure out, should my shoes go, even just something as simple as, do they go on the left side or the right side of the closet? Like something where they're getting that concrete, this is where this goes, this is, and you need to make sure that you put it in the right place every time, so they get in that practice of being organized. Also dedicating a spot in your house specifically for them doing homework or doing different things. I'm sure those of you that have been working at home during the pandemic, everybody's kind of had to figure out their own place to work away from the rest of their family, to have the quiet space. And so it's making sure the kids have their space as well, if possible, even if it's just like a tiny desk somewhere in a corner, finding a spot for them. And then just reinforcing using those graphic organizers. And then the last one is time management, which is having an accurate understanding of how long things will take, and being able to use the time effectively when you're doing those. So so time management is super important. It helps make sure things are done on time, but it also helps with your work-life balance, because if they're managing their time properly, that means they have more time to relax afterwards. And so it's actually super important, not just for getting work done, but also for giving students and yourself an opportunity to de-stress, and take a break. Because life is hard, school is hard, work is hard. It gives everyone a space. So time management looks like prioritizing things, whether it's like the assignments or certain chores or your own personal work. Or even activities, fun activities. Maybe they want to go do 5 things in one day. They want to go to someone's birthday party, and they want to go play soccer, and they want to go to the zoo. And having, you have to prioritize. Setting some time aside to do work without distractions. And then it also looks like just completing things on time, turning them in on time, doing their chores by the time that you say, and not putting off assignments until the last minute, which is very common for most people, myself included. So, Tina. So one of the things that we find super effective with students is using chimes or alarms to give like a 5 or 10 minute warning, depending on the student, as well as giving it like a chime at the time of the transition, because sometimes like making that transition like from class to class, or from, chores to like dinner, or dinner to homework, or whatever that transition is, it can be hard. Even if it's something fun to something fun, just that transition is difficult. So using chimes, having them practice prioritizing, again, using that for like the different tasks they want to do, or prioritizing for the middle schoolers, again, prioritizing, I like this class the most, so I'm going to do the homework for this class first, and then I'll do this one, or things like that. And then maintaining a consistent daily schedule and routine, using that organization piece and planning piece we talked about with the routines, and then also working with them on strategies for when they're stuck on a problem. So like if it's on a test, skipping the question and then coming back to it, or rereading, or asking for help. And that can be true for stuff on tests, or it can be true for like real life problems. They're struggling with something, go teach them how to go ask for help, rather than sitting there just, struggling with it, figuring out how to do things. And then just practice starting things as soon as possible. So I think that is it. So I'm going to turn that over to my wonderful co-counselor, Stephanie Argenbright.
Okay, the next section that we're going to talk about is attention flexibility. So I know Dana mentioned it earlier. So the question is, what is sustained attention? And so sustained attention is more than just focusing on a single task or a person at any given time. It's learning to really direct your focus. And then of course, when we get distracted, teaching yourself how to refocus yourself, redirect yourself back to that task at hand. It also consists of having the ability to switch between tasks as needed, or putting a stop to a task and having to move on to something else, which, especially for some of our younger students and children, that can be something that's kind of difficult and challenging. Here is a list of some general behaviors that are associated with attention. On the left, it's some of the ones that you typically think of, such as eye contact, active listening. On the right, there's some behaviors that we're familiar with for school, such as taking notes, like for our middle school students, or asking questions. As Julia stated earlier, things such as starting your work immediately. And then of course, like I mentioned before, a big thing is through self-talk and different things, teaching yourself to redirect, what should I be doing right now? Or, oh, I'm zoning out. I guess I should pay attention to what my teacher is saying so I know what to do. Why is sustained attention important for student success? Well, again, how we talked about these skills building on each other. Julia mentioned this earlier. It helps you increase your productivity. If you're able to focus and really work for a certain amount of time, and you can get your work done in that time, it makes you more productive. So then you have more time to do the things that you enjoy. When you are really focused, you're being productive, it also reduces your anxiety and stress, because you are engaged and you gain confidence in those things that you're learning and you're working on, because you actually know what you're doing, since you've been paying attention and not getting lost or missing things that were being explained to you potentially in class, or missing a step that, a parent might be asking you to do in a chore at home. It's also important to have sustained attention, and especially focusing on that active listening when you're engaging in social activities. So building those social skills, such as speaking between friends. How can you support sustained attention at home and at school? So the first thing that any and all of us need to do is identify any distractors that you might have, which is simply the things that might get in the way of being able to allow you to focus. Some common distractors are cell phones, computers that were on, the TV, music, noise, siblings. There's a whole endless list of things that can be a distractor, and what's a distractor for one person may not be a distractor for the next. But once you have established and realized what your distractors are, the next thing that you have to do is figure out ways to eliminate or minimize those distractors, especially during your working time. So what you can do is take the list of those things that are distracting to you and then try to figure out ways to make them not be as distracting. So for your cell phone, it could be something as putting it on silence, turning it upside down, putting it in another room, using it as a timer, like Julia mentioned earlier, and you can't look at it until it goes off. And then that can kind of be your reward for doing the work that you were doing within that time. Strategies for keeping focused in school. Some are kind of your more traditional, like say for our upper elementary and middle school students, like asking for a copy of the notes, or sometimes now using Google Classroom, teachers will post what their slide deck ahead of time. So you may be able to have it printed, take notes during that time. Taking frequent breaks. So that might be as we switch between activities at home, at school. It also might be doing things that give you other types of stimulation, such as tactile stimulation by using a fidget or doodling. The one thing with that though is to, before just starting out and trying to use a fidget or suggest doodling to your child, is to evaluate what the effect of doing an activity like that has on your child. If they use a fidget and it really stimulates them, it probably will be a distractor as opposed to something that allows them to focus. Now, if you have your child and they doodle or draw and it's really calming and soothing, the same thing for a fidget, that is something that will probably help them actually sustain and maintain attention. How can you support sustained attention at home? So the first thing that we want to do is focus on one task at a time. As Julia mentioned earlier, using a timer is a very effective way. Here I had just kind of the broad, like the average time to say 10 to 20 minutes. Please be aware, if you're talking like a kindergartner, it's probably going to be closer to like 5 minutes, especially for a non-preferred task, just because, like Dana mentioned, these are skills that we're learning and we're building on. So please be aware that like the amount of time to allow your child to focus is going to change dependent upon their age, maturity, and the current level that they're at. So you want to, during that time, try to keep your child really focused. And then after they have that concentrated time, allow them to take a break. If you have earlier elementary students, using first then statements are really effective. First then is set up to say first what your task is, then what your break or reward is. So, first make your bed, then watch your YouTube video. You can break things down into really, really small tasks that way. Another thing, like how Julia had showed us the great visual with our visual schedules, this is another great one that you can do. So if it's a younger kid, you can use the little picture icons. Here's your task, here's your break. If you have a kid who loves, for younger children, bubbles, or they like to play with kinetic sand or something, a break doesn't just have to be go off and do something like what we typically think of as a break from possibly doing nothing. It can also be a reward, so something that a child enjoys doing. The other thing is just making sure that we do have those brain breaks. When we take a break away from our focused engagement, it allows our brain that time to process, and it allows our brain to get set up and ready to go ahead and focus and sustain that engagement again. If you ever notice that you're getting really distracted, it's probably your brain telling you that it's time to take a break. And then here is another just kind of general list of ways that you can help sustain attention at home. One that I really want to point out here is it's important to give really clear and concise directions, especially to our younger kids, and also to break up larger tasks into more manageable ones. So what we kind of talked about earlier, like say cleaning your bedroom or something, it would be effective not just to say, go clean your room, but hey, clean your room. Don't forget to pick up your laundry, make your bed, and organize your desk, or whatever your tasks were to be. Another great thing to do, which is on this list, is remember, our kids learn a lot from modeling. And if you can also, while you're having your child do a focused task, go ahead and model that behavior for them. So you can, if you're working from home, do some of your work at that same time. Go ahead and put those distractors to the side, read a book, do some chores, go ahead and model what that focused work, that sustained attention in a task looks like for your child. The next topic is flexibility. And what we are referring to here is cognitive flexibility. So this is the ability to think of things from new or multiple perspectives, to learn a new way of doing something, to adapt to new situations, or simply having a change in your routine that doesn't make you overcome with frustration. What it looks like, again, this is where you're going to really start to see some of these overlapping themes. Transitioning between activities, especially preferred to non-preferred, especially for younger students, that can be a really difficult challenge. Adapting to situations, trying new strategies, being solution focused, being creative. So, and why is it important? It's important for us to have the ability to effectively adapt and cope with change, both expected and unexpected, so that we can better respond to stress and adverse events in our life. When we possess a skill, it allows us to hopefully avoid some common behaviors, such as things that are listed below, like difficulty in adapting to change, trying to avoid some of those meltdowns and tantrums when circumstances change. Again, switching between activities or having to leave an activity, I know can be difficult for students at different times. Getting frustrated when little things happen, or repeating making a mistake. So here are some strategies to promote flexibility for transitions or adapting to new situations. The number one is to simply try something new. So you can try new food, you can try watching a new TV show, a new walking trail, a club, I mean, you name it, you can try anything, whatever your child's, interested in, it's a great thing to try. Also, as mentioned earlier, providing choices. Please know that choices don't have to be open-ended, especially for younger kids. You can let them like, hey, here are options, all things that you're okay with, and then just let them choose. So say that our cleaning the bedroom example earlier, they can choose which task out of cleaning their room they want to do first. So it's all things that they need to complete, but they can choose the order in which they're going to do it. Mix it up, make small changes. It can be as simple as, if you always park in the same area at the grocery store, parking in a different part of the parking lot. So the end result is the same. You still go into the store, you still shop. You're just switching the manner in which you approach it. Acknowledge feelings of stress and be okay with uncertainty, because life is full of changes. We all know that as adults, and it's really important, again, to model what that looks like and expressing and letting them know like, hey, it changed, but it's okay. Now we get to do something else. And then the last section is promoting flexibility for new perspectives or new ways of doing things, such as staying solution focused, so really focusing on problem solving instead of focusing on the problem itself. You can also make up new rules for familiar games. So you can try playing a board game backwards. You can do any such thing that you want to. Share jokes, allow for messy creativity. Messy play is another thing that can be really important, especially for our younger, like little learners. A lot of kids are able to really express themselves and reach a state of regulation through using messy play. So that could be finger painting, playing with shaving cream, any type thing that can kind of make a mess, but obviously within what you're okay with them making a mess. Practicing empathy, like I mentioned earlier, and then self-talk. So checking in, refocusing yourself for different tasks, letting yourself know that things are okay and that they'll be fine. And now I'll turn things over to Dana.
My turn. So we are giving you a lot of information tonight, and we know that. And so we want to make sure tonight was an overview. And so you'll see that on our slides, we have a lot of specific examples of things that you can do. We're not going through each of them tonight. And so the same is going to hold true for our last two skills that we're talking about for the evening, which are self-regulation and perseverance. So really, this self-regulation piece is really where our social emotional learning and our executive functioning skills come together. As you can see, we've kind of progressed from these concrete skills that Julia talked about into more of these nuanced, I call them the abstract skills. So as we were hitting from Stephanie into attention now to flexibility, we're now having kind of developed some new work with our children that we kind of take for granted or we make assumptions around. And so we really want to turn these into explicit teaching for your children. And so the same holds true for self-regulation. This is just being in control of your thoughts and actions, which is so easy to say and so hard to do so many times. And so it's a skill that it takes many years to develop. We see there's expectations we have for our younger learners in kindergarten and first grade are different than what we have for our 7th and 8th graders. And there's a reason for that. We need to give them this time to grow and start learning this control over your thoughts and actions to be an effective person. It's not just a student, it really is a life skill. It's how do we navigate our world on a daily basis to get our needs met, and then also making sure that we're meeting the needs of others when we need to. So it's important because it really is the social piece. It's really increasing our social behaviors. By being able to be in control of ourselves, we're able to make and keep friends, make those social connections. It also allows us to focus on our goals. If we can keep our frustration or take those big emotions that we have and be able to calm ourselves back and get our thinking brain, part of our brain kind of coming back to us, we're able to then stay on our course for those planning pieces or those organization pieces. It's also, there's a self-esteem component to this. There's an empowerment in being able to feel that you're in control of yourself and your emotions. This is where that anger management piece comes in. We need, there's that stress and that fight or flight that comes through, and we need to figure out those calming strategies to help us come back into our thinking selves to get our problem solved or our needs met when we're feeling that anger or frustration. And this self-regulation piece also allows us to think ahead to our consequences, which is a big part of our growing and development. So I think there's some of these pieces are pieces that we maybe take a little bit for granted, but can actually be practiced. And so the first one is called co-regulation is self-regulation. We're really, as the caregiver, as the person in with your child, you're giving them maybe some vocabulary. You're doing some thinking out loud for them. So if you see your child stomping away from a sandbox, you might be saying to them, I can see that you're really frustrated because that child took your toy. That's so frustrating, and we need to find a way to help you through that. So kind of giving them those words and vocabulary, but as we grow and get older, we want our children to say that back to us. So, a 6th grader, we're not going to say you must be, or it looks like you are. We're going to ask them, what was that feeling that you had in that moment? And so we're going to be asking them to develop some of that feeling and thoughts and get them kind of really reflecting on what it is that is creating these emotions for them. And practicing patience. When we are instant gratifying our children all the time, and it's easy. I have 2 kids at home, and sometimes I'm throwing things at them just so that we can get through our day. But if we make that our pattern, then it's more difficult for our children to learn to wait and have patience with others when we're in situations where a person can't get to them right away. So if you think about a classroom with 20 to 30 children in it, that teacher may not be able to be there right away. Doesn't mean they're not going to be there. This means that there might be someone that they're helping and moving on to your child. So we can practice that at home. If you're in the middle of an important task, it's okay to say to your child, I will be with you in a minute. I'm going to finish this first. I need to do this. That's that prioritizing again. It's coming into play as we also move into that self-regulation. And then actually giving some language and modeling. What does it look like when we ask for help? A lot of our children will kind of just stand there and What they need is they need help, but they're not sure how to say it. And so a lot of times either we might see frustrating behaviors, we might see physical behaviors, we might see just silence, when really what they're looking for is help and support, but they're not sure how to ask for that. So having these conversations, using the word I'm struggling with, can I talk about it with you? If we're doing work, I'm working hard, but I'm still not understanding this. Can you help me? So really starting to actually give them language. We have some of our children are big talkers. I have a couple of those in my house, but it doesn't mean they necessarily have the vocabulary they need for self-regulation. And the same holds true in your home. As time, they need to have time to practice that. And you are that safe place to practice with. Kind of building on that, we also sometimes don't really spend a whole lot of time developing vocabulary beyond that sad, mad, happy, angry. So what we really want to start doing is building in vocabulary. And that's really important for our children, because being irate is very different than being frustrated. But if the only word I have for that is mad, I'm going to have a hard time regulating myself and trying to figure out what I need to do to help myself. Do I use my calming breaths? Am I able to just be able to do some self-talk? Or do I need to get an adult to help me? If I'm frustrated or annoyed, maybe my strategy is I need to walk away. But if I am irate, if I'm going to blow my top, I need to get to someone who can help me right away. And so by developing that vocabulary, you're also helping your child determine what they need to do with that emotion. And so in our younger children, sad, mad, and happy are fine, but you might start introducing those frustrated, annoyed. You might even worried or concerned, starting some of those vocabularies to help them give words to their feelings. Because once they have those words, then we can find those strategies that match those words to help them regulate that. The same holds true for upper elementary and middle school. We still have a lot of middle school students who use sad, mad, happy, annoyed. That's kind of it. It's not a huge vocabulary. And so we are still spending time developing that vocabulary, even at that level. So for those of you with older children, keeping in mind that they still need practice with that. And then of course, being explicit in your expectations. It's really frustrating if you don't know what's expected of you. And so it's really hard to self-regulate emotions when you don't know what's being asked of you. And so I know that Julie and Stephanie spent a lot of time about being explicit in breaking down pieces and sustaining attention. The same holds true when we're talking about rules or behaviors or things that we want our children to be doing or we expect them to be doing. We need to let them know what that is. We can't make assumptions that they know what to do in that situation. Here's a few other strategies. This is a big one. I'm not going to go through it because it's a lot, but it's something easily practiced with your children. We actually use a rating scale now in our wellness centers for all of our children, K-8. And so you'll see that we have kind of a check-in, check-out we do in our wellness centers, but this is something you can easily do at home when you can stop, rate your feeling so that you're doing a kind of a check-in and then do some calming strategies. That's a way to get your feeling brain back into your thinking brain so they can kind of work together. So again, just modeling that stop, rate where I'm at, and then use a calming strategy to match. That's a really big key. And it's something that we take for granted that we want to just solve the problem. But before we get there, we need to slow down and just really get that calm piece in first, because we're not going to be successful in problem solving if we can't get that calm thinking brain back into gear. Our feelings and our thoughts can work together, but we have to be in a place where we're regulated enough to get those two in working together. And some other pieces of this is this fixed growth mindset. I'm sure you've heard a lot about, but this is a huge piece of self-regulation. If we feel that we are automatically just something, so I am bad at math, or I am not a good friend. When those blanket statements come out, what we're feeling is that we're stuck here, we're fixed there. And that automatically kind of, if you're going to do a rating scale, puts you at that 3. You're annoyed, you're frustrated. So if we can come up with some growth mindset pieces, which maybe it might be, I'm having trouble with this area of math, but I did well in this one, so I'm going to work just like I did. It's not necessarily I'm good at math. We're not changing the negative to positive. We're just creating more of a rational thought, a growth thought that's not saying I'm stuck here. I'm not a good friend. My friend and I got into a conflict today. I'm going to need to do some iMessages tomorrow to help mend our friendship. Right? And I know that those are big thinking words, but it is still a way for our children to develop that I'm stuck here. So I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I'm stuck, I'm not going to grow, to, oh, wait a minute, I have some control, I have some power, I can do something in this, I can build my skill. And so it's easy to get kind of stuck in these fixed mindsets. It's a lot of us as adults do this. I'm not good at this, or I wasn't good at this in school, so therefore I must not be good at it now. And so making sure we're kind of modeling that more rational thinking of, I may not be able to do this yet, but I can practice it. Or today wasn't a good day, but it doesn't define my friendship. And then challenging your thinking, it kind of going into that same piece. Maybe I'm no good at this. I'm terrible at this. No one's going to be my friend. Those aren't necessarily, right, rational thoughts. Not that or helpful thoughts. We feel that. And so when we feel sometimes our thinking gets in that really negative space, but saying, well, wait a minute, why am I thinking that way? Oh, I had one incident today. I had one thing where my teacher didn't pick me to be first in line. It doesn't mean she doesn't like me. It just means that it was somebody else's turn. So being able to start challenging some of those really all or nothing thinking is a big piece of self-regulation. Which leads us into this last piece, which is the perseverance piece. And really, these two, perseverance kind of ties into all of what we've been talking about tonight. But it's allowing us to persevere through tasks or feelings or situations that are challenging to us. And if we don't succeed, how do we move on from that? A SMART goal is a huge piece of this. I'm not going to go over that again, but being able to break things up into smaller pieces, seeing that you can make little achievements through effort is huge. Problem solving situations that aren't happening. This is a great play thing at home. It's when it's not actually here, but maybe you have a kid that is really always late, right? So my project's taking more time than expected. What can I do? Just playing those conversations when you're in the car, when you're driving. I don't have the materials I need for my little, for our friends that maybe are trying to do an art project at home. What can I do? But not doing it in the moment, practicing it outside of that is a really big piece to help students so that when that moment does happen, they have some prior knowledge and can then persevere through those challenging tasks. Again, growth mindset is huge here on perseverance, because if we feel that we're stuck, we're not going to finish the task. If we feel we aren't good at something, we aren't going to complete the task. If we feel we are not meant to be where we're supposed to be, if we're, friendships are an issue, but I'm not going to go and try to make that new friend if I think that I just can't. And so these pieces of that growth mindset plays a huge part of not just this self-regulation, but also that persevering through those times where I might be feeling stressed, frustrated, concerned, worried, anxious, all those things. Growth mindset is a huge piece of this. And there's a lot of information out there. Tonight we provided us a poster. And then it's important for them to see that you are trying new things too and pushing through. Maybe it's a new game that you're all doing together that none of you know how to play, and that you've got to try a few times to get it right. Maybe it's a new hobby or new sport. It's okay as a 45-year-old to take up something new, and show that your kids that, hey, we're always learning and growing. Maybe you want to try tennis, go try it. Maybe you want to hike a Mount Diablo trail that you've never done, go try it. Just that your children see that not everything's going to be perfect the first time. Maybe there's a recipe. Maybe you've been watching, these amazing baking shows and you want to try one of them, and maybe it doesn't look anything like it does on the baking show, because it probably won't. It's okay that showing your children that it's all right. We move on. Maybe there's something in your house that you want to try, and you're going to try the DIY thing, and it might take 3 weeks instead of the 3 days it said. Those are all okay. Those are learning moments for our children. And so letting them see our frustration is okay, as long as we can also show that we persevere through that. We provided you with a list of resources that are linked directly into these. Obviously, executive functioning has so many aspects of it, and we can spend so much time. All three of us love this topic, and we could have conversations with you about it forever, but we can't do that tonight. So we left you a pretty good list of parent guided and kind of set towards parents for executive functioning and developing those skills further in your home. Also great stuff to look up. YouTube has some amazing stuff. I know we don't always want our kids on it, but they really do have some amazing stuff. So watching family things on YouTube, there's a few out there that we can provide for you if you want to follow up with that. We are going to have a Google form that you can complete tonight if you would like, that has just your name, what school your child attends, and if there's any questions or any further resources you want, we're more than happy to help you with that. But we're going to take our last few minutes and take any questions in the chat if we have any. I'm going to stop sharing our screen so you can see our faces again. And we'll let Connie jump back in if she's ready. And so if you have anything you want to ask, any kind of general questions, please feel free. If they're more specific to your child, please go ahead and fill out that Google form so we can send you in the right direction.
Thanks, Dana. So yes, I'm ready to accept questions through the chat. You'll notice in the chat, they have linked the Google form as well for your easy access. I'll say again that I said in the beginning, the recording of this session along with the slide deck is going to be made available on the district website. So you can always go back and re-listen to those aspects. There was a lot of information that you guys shared. You did a fabulous job. Thank you so much for your dedication and your passion and your expertise and professionalism, because it's really handy that we all have that at our fingertips. And thank you for serving our community in that way. But I know there was a lot in there, so you'll be able to access that through the website by tomorrow, along with the recording as well. I'm not seeing any questions coming up right now, so I think that there was a thorough presentation and lots of information, which is great. Great job, you guys. But again, as Dana mentioned, that Google form is available for you through the chat right now or through the slideshow that will be posted on the website. So I think with that, we will go ahead and close it out. So once again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was great to see so many audience members participating in this. And thank you to our wonderful presenters. And we'll see you next time. Next up on our Parent Ed is going to be Next Generation Science Standards. So I look forward to seeing everybody back for that event. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.